Hey everybody, this is Perch. Here's a point of view. It goes, "Hello Perch. You made a video recently that I can only half agree with." Well, that's like 45% more than most people. You were critical of writers getting assigned to books who weren't necessarily familiar with a character, going back and reading older stories to get to know them. Yeah, I think in general, if you're assigned a job, if you're put on a project, then you do have a responsibility to kind of educate yourself on what's going on and what's there. I think that's the right thing to do. So if you're an architect and you are hired to build a house, but you don't know actually how to build houses and you can't read a blueprint, then I think you have a responsibility to learn. But I also think you have, whoever gave you this job is a moron and needs to be kicked in the head. But that may be where this mail is going. It says, I understand your point. If you're writing Green Lantern, then at the bare minimum, you should have read one of the 6 ongoing Green Lantern books in the last 20 years. That being said, I find it hard to figure out the value in reading some of the old Silver Age books. Not because they don't matter to me, but because the publisher made them not matter. I don't understand how much of continuity from even 10 years ago matters. It's very a la carte. I'm not saying that absent reboots, all these writers would be bookworms, the Silver Age, but I am saying it's a lot more reasonable to be less knowledgeable when continuity shifts every 5 years. There's no major incentive for fans or writers to read those back issues, which sucks. Okay, that does suck. I agree. So you've actually opened up multiple problems here in one email. So congratulations. So number one, absolutely that sucks. I think the publishers have made continuity not matter in a lot of cases, and I think that's lousy. That's to the definite detriment of the comic and the readers and the publishing line and the character and everything. This is a bad development, and so that's bad. But to your other question, like how far should the writers who are coming onto a project be expected to learn? Well, here's the thing. This is. Let me just kind of talk you through my thought process. For a moment, I want you to picture yourself. You have just been given the assignment of writing Green Lantern. And let's say you've read some Green Lantern. You read Blackest Night because a lot of people have read Blackest Night. Maybe you read the Sinestro Corps War and just some of the more like the Jeff Johns stuff. Maybe you read some of the recent issues. But let's say you've read, in the grand scheme of things, very little Green Lantern. You've read, quote unquote, the important stuff from the last 10 years or so, but not really further back. And it's unclear, how much of this is in continuity and it's not, because to your point, there's been a lot of just, screwing around with continuity. So not sure, how much of it matters anymore. So what would you do? Okay, now you've been given the job, and let's assume you're not some kind of double agent. You actually want to do a good job. You actually want to do the best job of the book that you can. How do you proceed? I'll tell you how I would proceed. I would certainly go back and I would try and read more Green Lantern issues. I would go online because right now the internet's a pretty amazing resource. So I would start Googling things. I would type in most important Green Lantern stories. I would go to the Wikipedia entry of Green Lantern. I'd scroll all the way down to the boring part, the annotations part, and I would look at all the issues referenced in the write-up of Green Lantern, and I would try and start there. I would read those. I would make sure that I had a good handle on the most important stories in the lore, based on kind of what was being said. I would then basically, in doing all of this work, I think I would start to get some ideas of the story I would want to tell. I think an idea would start to form in my head. Chances are, if I got the job, I gave some kind of pitch to the editor. So, I probably had some idea going in, and then kind of reading some of the best Green Lantern stories, that pitch will have been refined a little bit. So then I would write my story, but I would do so with humility. And the humility is I would assume that I'm going to make continuity errors as I'm writing my story. So I would write it out, kind of in an outline form, as quickly as possible, and I would reach out and try and find help. I would try and find a couple of friends, people who know more about Green Lantern than me, and I would say, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. Ideally, I'd have an editor who would give a shit that I could also reach out to and say, here's where I'm going with the story. Help me out here. 2 questions. Number 1, does my story break continuity? Is there any element in my story that makes no sense, that has been explained away, that just I can't do? Have I triggered something that breaks continuity? And if not, where are some areas in this story that I could do some nice nods to past stories to reinforce the continuity? Not things that are going to change my plot, but more than an Easter egg, something there, hey, Green Lantern's going to be visiting this one planet, rather than just have it be some rando planet that, has never been seen or heard from before. I'm going to make it a planet that, showed up a long time ago in Green Lantern, and we're going to make sure it, looks the same and everything else. And, maybe I'll change my dialogue from Hal Jordan going, oh, here's this neat new planet. And instead he'd be like, oh man, I haven't been here in years. I mean, just little things. I think that a combination of certainly the internet, access to a digital library, and most importantly, some help would do the job. I think that sounds like a lot of work. It's actually not that much work. I think you could, if you have some good people you can lean on. There's plenty of people out there. It's one of the reasons why we could turn this into a positive by basically reaching out to a few people in the fan community and saying, I want to make this story the best possible story I can, and you, the fan, can help me do that. So maybe I have to have you sign an NDA or whatever, but I want some good advice, and I'd like you to help me write the best story I can write. I think that would get you that would get out. That story would get out. Not the story you're writing, but just the idea that you reached out for help. That would get out, and very quickly, the amount of goodwill you'd get would be huge. And you'd tell a better story in the process. Again, it wouldn't take that long. None of this stuff is time consuming, really. It's just a matter of, basically, validating that your work doesn't break anything, and then figure out ways to enhance your work with little nods to the continuity that benefit everyone. If you do that, particularly even that second one, even though things are small and kind of minor that you're adding, the benefit to that is that you're leaving something behind for the next writer or writers 5 times from now. You're basically fleshing out this world. You're making it more powerful, more well-rounded, and you're just giving people more toys to play with. This is a good thing. I think that in particular, Marvel and DC, because they have legacy characters, because there's they've had this ongoing narrative, it's really important for their characters to have what I just talked about. Whether you're being put on Superman or Spider-Man or Green Arrow, whatever it happens to be, number one, make sure you're reading the most important stories. There was a writer, and not just Zdarsky, but a little while back, there was a writer on Daredevil who bragged at never having read Born Again. Just I won't read it. I don't like Frank Miller. I won't read it. Well, you shouldn't be writing Daredevil then, because that's a pretty important, critical story that goes over the character. By the way, just to say it, just because you read this stuff doesn't mean you're held captive by it. It doesn't mean that you're bound by it. It doesn't mean that you can no longer, tell your own creative, interesting story. It means that you basically, you're in a position where you have to, you have to acknowledge the past happened as you're telling your new tale. There's almost no case where acknowledging the past, handcuffs you to so much that you can no longer tell a creative story. There's very few cases, unless you're truly wanting to write something entirely different than the character you're hired to write for. Like if you wanted to write for Spider-Man, but you didn't read or care about Aunt May, and so you're going to kind of ignore that completely. Why would you be put on Spider-Man? At that point, you don't want to write Spider-Man. You want to write a completely different character. You don't have to disavow core parts of the character's history. You shouldn't. But by and large, understanding continuity makes for a fuller, richer, better story than it hurts. So anyway, I do think there are limits. No, I don't think that it's a requirement that every single writer has to go back and read every single comic, but I do think they should read the important ones. I think they should have a good method for validating their story. There's lots of easy ways to do it. Anyway, there you have it. That's my answer. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.